Look, this is simple. If an ordinary person carries $10,000 in cash, questions get asked. But when people are seen leaving U.S. airports with up to $1 million in cash, bypassing banks and records, people notice. That exact concern came up in a congressional hearing when lawmakers questioned Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. Because when money skips the system, it's not just a security issue. It's a public confidence problem. Now watch this exchange. After the clip, we'll break down what's really happening.
There are reports in social media that have shown, and I don't want to put you in a position where you cannot answer this because of anything that you've learned in Minnesota with the $9 billion worth of fraud. But there are social media accounts that show people who are at a Minneapolis airport with baggage full of up to $1 million cash attempting to exit the country. And I have engaged several people who have worked at Treasury to ask their opinion about that. Not the relationship between how they got the money, but just that it's going out of the country and following the law. Can you tell us or give this committee your viewpoints about people not using some other system, but taking cash up to $1 million through our airports to leave the country?
Yes, so that is a DHS TSA function. Having learned of this, we are attempting to integrate our FinCEN better with those forms. What we are trying to do at Treasury via FinCEN is to keep money from being wired out of the country through what are called money service businesses. So we have issued a geographic targeting order bringing down the amount of reporting to $300 and also asking on the form, if someone is wiring money out of the country, are you receiving public benefits?
These are all very important issues, and as you did talk about, Department of Homeland Security does have a role in this. I would suggest to you that Treasury probably has a philosophy about the role of the American dollar in world economy. The stability that we have, the use of wanting to make sure that the dollar remains that dominant use. But I would tell you that I will be very interested if you have a working group on this of us making ourselves aware, because it is an issue to people who simply see social media.
We look forward to working with you on that, Congressman.
Thank you, Secretary. Mr. Secretary, as you have alluded to, and as the discussion here has been about banks, community banks, the ability that they have, you recognize, because you spoke directly to it, about the stress that they are placed under as opposed to bigger banks. Could you please talk to us about what you believe the role is of home ownership, which is increasingly a part of the political discussion and debate and discussions for members of Congress back home, of solving our home ownership problem? And you've got almost a minute, boy, I'm giving you a lot of time, and interest rates as they correspond to people being able to buy their own homes.
Good, well, thank you. And I would note that I was also a banks and financial institutions analyst for 35 years and was instrumental in working with the government to bring down American Continental and Sun State Savings and Loans, which were the beneficiaries of the Keating Five. Getting small banks lending again, we need to get them back into the mortgage market. No one knows their communities like small banks. And that having moved into the larger system, the strength and breadth of the U.S. mortgage market is choice. And we have lost the choice in the small banks. And I think we need to get them back into the housing lending business. And we are seeing, it's a tragedy that the average first-time home buyer is now 40 years old. 40 years old.
Well, I had a discussion last night with the realtors about their importance in this process too. So I'd like to once again make sure we see community banks and realtors
Gentlemen.
and home builders all have an interest in this.
Gentleman's time has
I want to thank the gentleman.
I thank the gentleman from Texas. Before we move on, I want to remind everyone participating today to uphold the House.
Let's slow this down and actually understand what that exchange was pointing to. What you just watched was not an accusation. It was not a charge. And it was not a political stunt. It was a question about public confidence and why that confidence starts to weaken when large amounts of cash appear to move outside the financial system. That distinction matters. When this concern is raised, the focus is not on whether carrying cash is legal or illegal. The focus is on what people see and how those images affect trust in the system, because financial systems do not run only on laws. They run on confidence, and confidence is fragile. The issue begins with perception. People see videos and posts circulating online showing travelers at U.S. airports, including Minneapolis, with luggage reportedly carrying up to $1 million in cash, attempting to leave the country. Even if every single clip is not fully verified, the reaction they trigger is real. People ask the same questions. Why that much cash? Why not through banks? And why outside the system most people are required to use? For the average American, money does not move like this. Salaries go through banks. Transfers leave records. Even relatively small transactions can trigger questions or holds. So when something appears to bypass that structure, it immediately stands out. That is the concern being surfaced. And it is not a new concern. Historically, bulk cash movement has always attracted scrutiny. Not because cash itself is illegal, but because cash avoids automatic oversight. There is no instant digital trail, no immediate compliance alert, no built-in transparency the way electronic transfers create. This is not speculation. It is documented history. In past years, U.S. authorities have repeatedly intercepted undeclared bulk cash at airports. Some cases were tied to tax evasion schemes, where individuals attempted to move large sums offshore to avoid reporting requirements. Others were connected to international fraud networks, where cash was moved physically to stay outside banking scrutiny. There have also been cases involving sanctions violations, where cash was used to avoid monitored financial channels. In each of those cases, investigators later explained the same basic logic. Cash was chosen because it stayed outside the system. That history is important because it explains why regulators focus so heavily on visibility. It is why cash declaration rules exist. It is why thresholds are set, and it is why physical cash movement is treated differently from electronic transfers. The question raised in the hearing fits directly into that historical pattern. It does not assume wrongdoing. It does not claim illegality. It asks whether the system appears to be seeing everything it should. And when a system appears to miss things, trust erodes. That is where public confidence comes in. Financial stability is not built only on interest rates, policy statements, or economic data. It is built on the belief that rules apply consistently and that large movements of money are visible to the institutions responsible for oversight. Once people begin to believe that significant sums can move quietly, without detection or explanation, confidence weakens, even if no crime is ever proven. That is the subtle but critical point. The response from Treasury reflects that complexity. There is no outright dismissal of the concern. Instead, there is an explanation of how oversight is divided. Physical cash movement falls under transportation and border authorities. Treasury monitors financial flows through separate reporting systems. Coordination between agencies is discussed as something that needs constant improvement. That detail matters. If oversight were already seamless, there would be no need to emphasize integration or coordination. The explanation itself signals that monitoring is layered, fragmented, and dependent on multiple systems working together, and that matches reality. Financial oversight in the United States has never been handled by a single authority. Banks are monitored one way, money service businesses another. Physical transportation of cash is treated differently. Each framework covers part of the risk, not all of it. The vulnerabilities tend to appear at the edges. Airports are one of those edges. Cash at an airport can be legal, it can be reportable, and it can be easily misunderstood by the public. That gap between legality and perception is where problems begin. This is also where political interpretations often get distorted. The question raised is not framed as a party attack, it is framed as oversight. Oversight exists precisely to raise uncomfortable questions when public trust is at risk. The concern did not originate in Congress. It originated with what people were already seeing and reacting to. Bringing that concern into a hearing does not create distrust. It acknowledges it, and acknowledgement matters. We have seen this pattern before. After major fraud cases, after enforcement failures, after large-scale misuse of public funds, public trust rarely collapses overnight. It erodes gradually through moments where people feel the system does not see everything equally. That is why regulatory responses often focus on transparency rather than punishment alone. Lower reporting thresholds, additional disclosures, improved data sharing, these steps are designed to restore visibility, not just enforce rules. They are not signs of panic, they are signs of recognition. Recognition that systems must not only function correctly, but must also appear to function correctly. The Minnesota context adds weight to this concern. The state has experienced high-profile fraud cases involving very large sums in recent years. That history increases sensitivity to oversight gaps. When a lawmaker from that region raises questions about cash movement, it reflects experience, not speculation. Again, this does not make the activity illegal. It makes the concern understandable, and that distinction is essential. At no point is it suggested that everyone carrying cash is doing something wrong. There is no claim that these specific instances are violations. The point is that when people see large amounts of money moving outside familiar systems, without explanation, confidence takes a hit. And once confidence takes a hit, financial stability becomes harder to protect. The strength of the US dollar depends not only on economic output, but on trust in transparency and oversight. When movements of money appear opaque, questions follow, both domestically and internationally. This hearing reflects that reality. The response does not deny the concern. It does not dismiss public reaction. It explains how oversight works, where responsibilities lie, and what is being done to improve coordination. In other words, the system responds by addressing perception, not ignoring it. That is what democratic oversight is supposed to look like. This is not about proving guilt. It is about preventing doubt from spreading unchecked. When institutions explain themselves clearly, confidence stabilizes. When they do not, speculation fills the gap. The role of this exchange is not to convict anyone. It is to surface a concern that already exists and place it where it can be examined openly. That is why this matters. Not because it exposes something hidden, but because it addresses something visible. Large amounts of cash leaving airports look unusual to the public. Unusual things raise questions, and in a democracy, those questions belong in hearings. That is the full context. No accusation, no verdict, just oversight responding to perception before perception turns into distrust. If you find this kind of calm, fact-based breakdown useful, subscribe to the channel. It helps us keep bringing clear explanations without noise or hype.